Hey there, and welcome to another Kidlit chat. I'm your host, Brooke Van Sickle, as always, and I have the wonderful Antoinette with me here. Hey, Antoinette, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Just great. Thanks so much for taking the time to do this.
Yeah, thanks for
So,
having me.
for sure. For everyone who's watching, do you want to just introduce yourself and a little bit about who you are and like where you work and all that good stuff?
Yeah, of course. I'm Antoinette. I'm currently a literary agent. I'm also an illustrator, a writer, a graphic designer, and then I'm also a film and media coordinator on behalf of our agency, which is LGLM now. Previously, I worked at IGLA, but in short, I like to call myself a woman of many hats because I am a multimedia creative in short. But yeah, otherwise, I have like multiple platforms I work across in terms of like the creative industry, and I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. Like you said, you have a ton of different things within your background, which I think is so cool because that probably helps, like when you're handling with clients or when you're looking at books or any part really of the publishing world. So, how do you think that that kind of helps you when it comes to being an agent?
Yeah, I always actually say it was a perfect marriage of all my skill sets without me even knowing that it was an option for someone like me. So I actually started out in college with a bachelor's in interactive media and design, but with having a background in fine art, and learned very swiftly that graphic design and art are very different things. And I was also a writer, and I just knew that if I ever got a job in anything, it would be something to do with writing or books because I absolutely loved storytelling. And that was consistent across like all the creative platforms that I have, is that I love storytelling, whether that's visual storytelling or like fiction writing. I just loved it. And I started looking into jobs that revolved around that. And the publishing industry really fascinated me because I just love thinking about how a messy draft goes from just this idea on paper to like this finished product on a shelf in bookstores that you can just purchase and just fully immerse yourself in a story. And I fell in love with learning about that process. And I realized, wow, there's actually people who actually work in this whole industry and this pipeline of getting books from draft to finished product. And from doing research, I started applying to jobs and internships. And a lot of people were telling me, it's very difficult to do that unless you have like a background in like writing, creative writing. But I kind of went for it anyway. And long story short, once I got my internship, I learned that basically what made me stand out amongst other applicants was the fact that I have a multimedia background. Is that because I'm an artist and a graphic designer, I can actually empathize with the creative process that a lot of illustrators at the agency went through. And I could also empathize with the writers. And I could bring my graphic design expertise to help with marketing, publicity, any illustrator campaigns that we wanted to do for the clients. I could hop on calls and talk about portfolio reviews and composition for art. So it was the perfect marriage of like everything that I love to do, but in a way that helped to facilitate storytelling and book publishing. And it was such an eye-opening experience for me, realizing that, wow, I actually found the perfect bridge to all my talents.
Yeah. Oh, I think that's so cool. And I think a lot of authors and illustrators would really appreciate that from an agent too, just like having that bond, especially when you hit like writer's block or rejection land and all
Mhm.
of those things. You can kind of sympathize a little bit.
Yes, absolutely. And a lot of my clients do tell me that as like it feels really relatable having conversations with them. And I'm very honest with like the writers that I make offers on in terms of like, yeah, I'm a writer too. So I know what it's like to have my work redlined and, being afraid to trust a third party with your book baby, or, going through the query trenches or not knowing what's at the end of this very, very long publishing journey.
Yeah.
And, sometimes it helps relieve a little stress, or it calms them down often, especially when I take pictures, live pitches. The first thing I like to say is like, I've been in your shoes, I'm a writer. And it's like just relief falls from their shoulders. And it's great because I do come from the perspective of creative, so I'm very sensitive and aware of the place of the creative in the industry.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Well, you kind of mentioned it because you mentioned the acronyms, but you're at Looking Glass Literary. And is it a spinoff of Irene Goodman or talk to us about it because it's new. So
Yes,
how did it
very.
start, and what's it been like to be a part of like it's sort of like a startup, like a ground up experience?
Yes, we're very fresh, and it's all thanks to our wonderful founder, Natalie Lacazelle, who is also my mentor and really took me under her wing from senior year in college as an intern from assistant to training agent at IGLA. And I've just been working with her ever since because she was just an amazing mentor. She taught me all the nuts and bolts of the industry, really provided a lot of opportunities to help me learn about being an agent in a way that was effective. And having a great mentor is really important as an associate agent, if not the most important thing when you're first starting out. And at that point, I didn't even know if I wanted to be an agent, but after seeing the difference that Nellie was making in the lives of her clients and just how much she was an advocate and a champion for those voices, it really inspired me. And I realized not only can I write the stories that I want to see, but I can advocate for them. And that was like very eye-opening for me. So from that moment, I knew that I wanted to be an agent, and a lot of that had to do with, Natalie's mentorship and how she was very flexible with my schedule as a student, and never once pressured me into that decision. It was a very natural decision for me. And back then, I was at IGLA, and I worked very closely with Natalie remotely. And during that time period, I was mostly doing my training and attending a lot of conferences, a lot of writer events. And then one time I came back from the Atlanta Writers Conference, and I get on call with Natalie, and she basically says, "So IGLA is not going to be here anymore in like a year. And I've decided to start my own agency. Do you want to come with me?" And I was like, absolutely, because up to that point, I actually recommended to Natalie that she start her own agency,
Yeah.
because she just has such rich experience across different agencies, not just IGLA. She has learned from a lot of mistakes done at other agencies and really applies that to the way she mentors her new agents and interns at the agency, and just the way she applies her process with helping clients and getting books sold. So from there, we decided to create Looking Glass Literary, and we had a year to develop it. And we did a lot of groundwork, a lot of planning ahead of time with clients and making sure that what we call the Great Migration worked out pretty well. And it was very, very eye-opening for me seeing an agency kind of materialize from the first step to the end, and not only like being there to witness its manifestation but also being a participant in it was incredible, because I actually take on a much more active role at Looking Glass than I did at IGLA. And I was already used to working with Natalie at that point. So now I was actually able to apply my creative skills much more effectively in a nuanced way. And that would be as a film and media coordinator and as our social media manager. So I'm also actively acquiring for my list as well for LGLM. And yeah, that's just kind of how that happened. And we've welcomed two new agents at LGLM who are just amazing additions to the team. And I couldn't have expected a better outcome. And I'm really excited to see how the agency is going to grow.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I think that's so cool. And I don't know, I think when you work with a boutique, there's just like so much more hands-on. You get a lot of learning, your authors get attention, all the good stuff. So are there
Yes.
any cool projects you're working on right now?
Oh, yes, definitely. I am super excited for some of the things that my clients are working on. I guess I could talk about a few of them in particular.
Yeah.
So I have a terrific sapphic Phantom of the Opera retelling set in Bengali, India, in the golden era of Bengali musical theater. And it is just incredible storytelling. The author is so talented, and I'm so excited to see it. Um, I also have a polyamorous gothic fantasy currently being edited right now. Super excited for it. It really touches on like dark book binding and just like everything we love about that nostalgic feeling of like crafted book binding, but in a much more dark way. And I'm just so excited because I just love that blend of like dark horror and psychological dark horror with like deity pantheons, but then also like the undertones of romance. It's amazing. And then we also have, oh, I should probably mention I co-agent. So some of the projects I'm also working with Natalie on. So another project that I have is a YA graphic novel that blends just that beautiful nostalgic fantasy adventure in a setting inspired by indigenous North African lore. And for me, this was a very eye-opening project because I absolutely love this is a prime example of the books I'm looking for is like something that really touches on, the cornerstones of history that have been erased and highlighting voices that, need to be heard right now. And a lot of this project was like blending mythology that does you can't really find online. It's passed down through oral storytelling from the author's family and her lineage and her heritage. And she took those wonderful mythologies from Algeria and Morocco and blended them into this really imaginative fantasy setting. And with these really great illustrations that have like a blend of like that anime style, but with the artist's own creative take on it. Super excited for that. But those are like some of the top three that I'm pretty excited for.
Yeah. Oh man, they all sound really cool. You did mention that you are acquiring, and then you mentioned, something that you're interested in. But if someone was interested in submitting to you, what are some things that you're looking for?
Yes, right now I'm looking to prioritize YA adult. I don't represent middle grade or picture books. Really looking for more illustrators. I would love to find some more graphic novel illustrators in the more upper adult space, and anyone who's kind of playing with that blend of manga or anime style, but like blending their own culture in it. I love anything that's inspired by mythological retellings from around the world. One project that I've always talked about that I'm really looking for is kind of like a story that reflects the female martial artists side of the story that we get over and over again in like martial arts films and media. Um, for example, a lot of people don't know that Wing Chun was created by a female monk, and yeah, Nagemwe. And I talk about this story so much because Wing Chun was popularized by Grandmaster Ip Man and Bruce Lee. But no one talks about the foundation of it. It's the only martial arts created by a woman,
Oh,
and I would love to find a story that talks about Nagemwe's story of teaching that to her students or anything that kind of just reflects the stories that we haven't heard and breaks boundaries across the board. I love anti-colonial stories, so anything that kind of touches on history, resistance and anti-colonialism. And then anti-colonialism can also apply to story structure and not just themes, because anatomy itself can be diverse, the anatomy of prose, I mean.
yeah.
Aside from graphic novels, I'm also looking for like fantasy projects. I love fantasy, martial arts fantasy as well. It's a big thing on my list. The best example I can think of is like Jade City. The Greenbone Saga is like one of my top reads right now, and I love to find something in that vein. Horror books as well. When I mean horror, I mean more of like think Jordan Peele psychological horror
Yeah.
and less slasher kind of horror. In the lower like YA space, mostly graphic novel projects. I have a side of me that's really interested in historical fiction, but I'm very specific, as in I'm looking to prioritize female voices, things that talk about history and just a lot of the women in history that have not had their stories told, and uh also other like eras of history that have not been told. Like I'd love to find anything that talks about the Moorish conquest of Spain or queens that we have not heard of aside from Nefertiti and Cleopatra, like Queen Azingwa, Mani Reines, Queen Azantewa. Um, I could go on, but essentially my priority for acquiring next year, which is when I'll be open, is fantasy projects, adult graphic novels.
Yeah. Oh, all of those sound really cool. And that's like all stuff I like to read. So get those books published and then
You have
I'll
good
take a look
taste.
at them. Yeah. Oh, I love it. Well, tell us, I have one last little question, and that is tell us a little bit of something about you that someone might find surprising to learn.
Okay, for this one, I feel like I spoiled it a little bit in my earlier commentary, but I am a martial artist and also a huge nerd. So that might not be surprising. But yeah, aside from books, like I love illustrating characters, creating my own worlds, and especially like female characters and stories that are inspired by my own heritage. And in terms of like martial arts, I grew up in a family of martial artists. My dad studied for a long time in Los Angeles and taught me and the rest of my siblings taekwondo. And it's one of my life goals to actually study Wing Chun in China. So that's, I guess, a little fun fact.
I love it. That's so cool. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much for taking the time today to sit down and chat with us. This has been so fun.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for your invitation.
Yeah. And guys, if you want to learn more about Antoinette, the link is in the description too.